So, guess what happens when you unplug? You forget things in a good way, and you realize things differently. Like, I don't. I'm gonna just use a quick example as like probably a landing or a starting point, diving off point. But I was just online. I've unplugged in a lot of different ways, not because like I want to disconnect from the world and all of its, whatevers, but I kind of unplugged because I redirected my focus. I'm no longer getting into things like online communities. I'm no longer getting into things to put myself in there. Rather, I'm going into my own section and I'm taking care of my business and I'm minding myself. And I'm, still thinking about stuff, still processing stuff. I've got the whole, working through everything that happens every day. Life goes on. But there's a change in the mindset, and there's a change in the way that we utilize things that actually can help us to reevaluate what it is we believe. And in that context, I went online, I saw a post, and several posts actually, like it's all the same in what I see, but there was one that was like, it's okay that you're hurting. You have past generational trauma, or it's okay if you're not understood. And I get it. But I also get that we have to work through not what we're being told as an excuse, as a reason, or a scapegoat, but, a crutch, but rather actually acknowledge and accept, okay, if that's true, then what am I doing to change that, fix it, and create something different and more positive for myself? So we don't have to be stuck in our beliefs. We can unplug and detach and quit feeding ourselves certain things and start feeding ourselves new things and new thoughts, new ideas, new circumstances, new environments, new people. And so since I've done that and I've redirected how I want to focus myself, then I'm also, with the full moon, I'm doing releasing ceremonies. And not only am I disintegrating, I'm also integrating. So I've released bad habits and things that are no longer serving me with the full moon cycle, but with the new moon cycle, I've also brought in things into my life that are good for me, that are better for me, and I'm looking for those things as well. So it's kind of a twofold cycle all the times, and that's where we get that infinity loop, because it's twofold cycles and they touch, and they only touch briefly right there in the center. And if you change the cycle that you're on, then you get on a new track, and you'll go so far with that track, and you might loop back, and then you're in this new cycle, and then hopefully you don't backslide, because now you're back in this loop, and that's our infinity loop. And we kind of keep going, and where this touches in the middle, that is the component of our choice point, our decision point, that allows us to go from one cycle to a different cycle. And so if we are, between the moon phases of the whole moon, the full moon, the new moon, the dark moon, we can allow ourselves to bring in what we want and release what we no longer want, and we can actually start seeing movement. So rather than, looping back and forth, we start having an oscillation. And maybe there's some ups and downs, and maybe there is a little backsliding, but, the oscillation's going to go through. So if we are allowing ourselves to connect on those touch points in the middle, we will stop going back, sliding, or stop going in circles. We'll be able to see forward movement. And if you're really good, and it's not like a up and down oscillation, it's more like a up, up. And so there's a little bit of down, but it's not too down. So there is a high road, if you will, to this cycle. If you want to move forward, you can take the high road. Or this is what I was doing for years. I'd be here, and this is my touch point, my decision-making process. I'd go up, 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 up. Here's my touch point, my decision-making process. And while I'm still moving forward, not sliding back on everything, not moving forward, still moving forward. But I would get all the way down here in this low depression phase of a new cycle. And so I would fight through that, and as I'm coming back up and I'm still moving forward, but then sometimes I would loop back. And my high, and then I would loop back, and then I would come back. And so I was always like, like we all have our own different cycle and how we go about this. But if you can figure out how to just keep hopping along, your lows aren't going to be as low. Your peak highs won't seem as high a peak, because in your oscillation cycle, then you are not going all the way to this low, and you're stopping yourself at that decision point before you, what we say, would backslide or cause you to, even if you're keeping moving forward, backslide, downslide into a new low point where now things look different but feel the same, or feel different but look the same, and then you change a whole bunch of stuff and you get this super high. So maybe like everything crashed, and so you decide to take on every single new activity. And if you've ever seen the movie Elizabethtown, I know that's what it's called. After her husband died, she went manic. I think it was, I don't remember the actress's name. I think I know it, but I don't want to be wrong, so I'm going to say it. But in the movie, after her husband died, and then so she takes on all these new activities and hobbies, and cooking and dancing and comedy and everything. And she was manic because she had never been in that state of low before. And so she did everything she always wanted to do in order to help herself get back to her happiness. And there is a story and a key component in there on healing grief. And it took time, and it takes time, and it takes people pushing you. And the people around her didn't understand that she was a happy person, and she didn't know how to grieve. She couldn't grieve. She just had to keep moving forward. And so now she had time where her energy, her focus, and her love had a place to go, because what she was focused on, what she loved, and what she was happy with wasn't with her anymore. So I'm getting so it's very touching. But her method and her way of dealing with it was to just keep going and being on these touch points, and keeping moving forward, so that the oscillation cycle isn't like so high and low. But the people around us don't always understand that, because when we are in a society or a situation or an environment or a belief system or a cycle that tells us that we have to come down at some point, that something needs to be bad, something needs to feel off, the other shoe's got to drop. So we've got all these thoughts that are fed into us that help us remind ourselves, subconsciously or consciously, that we have to go down. But we don't have to go down. We can just stay on a consistent touch point where our choices and our decisions are, is it happy, healthy, wealthy, wise, body, mind, soul, and spirit. We are looking at all of these, facets of our life at this choice point. And is it helping keep me happy, healthy, wealthy, and or wise? Is it helping me in any way for the future or the present? And how does the past play into it? We can look at it from every facet. And so there's always some dimensionality and perspective and consideration, so that we don't just keep going back in circles and circles and circles, because we don't want to keep going in circles. That's just not where we want to be. If we can keep, we can keep looping in infinity and keep telling ourselves that we have lessons to learn, and we have, all these things that help us keep looping back and forth. And when we actually wear this cycle in, it actually becomes our comfort zone. So we have the opportunity to check ourselves with that as well, because our comfort zone is, it's easy, it's pleasant, and it doesn't require us much for expansion. We don't have to change. But as long as our comfort zone isn't a place of, this bottom side of the cycle, and we're comfortable here at the bottom side of this cycle, and so then we're just kind of spinning there. We want to make sure that our comfort zone is actually our happy place. I think, like that we are emitting a more radiant, vibrant essence from our being, that we are giving off the colors of the flowers, and the things that we appreciate and enjoy and that we love, so that life will just be beautiful. Yeah. So find your happy comfort.